this is the Name It, Change It, How Calling Out Sexism Changes the Game panel. I think all of these ladies have a lot to say on the topic. My name is Crystal Ball. I'm co-host of The Cycle on MSNBC. I am a mother, a CPA, and most importantly, a former endorsed WCF candidate. So it's always nice to be back among family. And let me go ahead and introduce our panel. First off, we have Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. And by the way, we have 3 new congresswomen here, so we're very lucky. Congresswoman Beatty is from Ohio, and she actually was really integral in shaping the research for the new Name It, Change It research, and according to one Sam Bennett, is a powerhouse. So, Sam says it, you know it's true. Next we have Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. And Congresswoman Gabbard is a member of the U.S. House from Hawaii. She's the first American Samoan, the first Hindu, and along with her colleague Tammy Duckworth, she's one of the first female combat veterans in the U.S. Congress. Not too sure. Next we have Congresswoman Grace Meng. She's currently a member of the U.S. House from New York, elected in 2012 as well. First Asian American elected to Congress from New York, and she serves on the Committee on Foreign Affairs and the Committee on Small Business. Thank you. Next we have Val Demings, who is the first woman to serve as the chief of Orlando Police Department. Amazing stuff. She was the Democratic nominee in 2012 to represent Florida's 10th congressional district. We all hope she will run again.
Yes.
And last but certainly not least, the woman who needs no introduction, our fearless leader, Sam Bennett. Sam's been the president and CEO of the Women's Campaign Fund, the She Should Run Foundation, and WCF PAC since March 2009. And under Sam's fearless leadership, WCF and She Should Run's combined budget has more than doubled. Incredibly important metric. Thank you. We could talk about if you experienced anything that you would call sexism or double standards on the campaign trail, or racial stereotypes that you may have encountered.
Both.
Yes, all of the above.
I'm running through all of them in my head. Well, in terms of gender stereotypes, I think that something that I encountered a lot and still encounter after I'm elected is as a mom of 2 young kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And people ask me all the time how I do it, and some ask in a very well-intentioned way. And I've been in the same room with some of these male candidates and electeds, and they get comments like, "Oh wow, you're such a wonderful parent, you're bringing your kids around." In terms of ethnic stereotypes, that was not as enjoyable either. I had an opponent in the general election that said that I was a communist, a Chinese national, and claimed that I apparently was the only one in the world who could have dual citizenship with China and America. So those are some personal stories.
And how about you, Congresswoman Gabbard?
Sure. Having a background in the military as well as my time working in the political field has been obviously male-dominated in a lot of respects. A little bit of a different experience than Grace. I'm not married and don't have kids. And I remember a conversation that a big supporter of mine in Hawaii had with me, sat me down, and he said, "Tulsi, I really want to support you and raise money and invest a lot of time and energy and encourage my friends to do so, but I have one burning question. Are you going to just fall in love and have babies and throw this great investment away?" And he was dead serious. He was very concerned about this. And it's an interesting thing for us to be able to laugh and shake our heads, but to understand that, this is a very successful businessman and somebody who likes to think of himself as very progressive and a champion for equality and for all people, and yet this was the big question, the one burning question he had on his mind before taking that step. So it becomes a challenge and an opportunity, I think, for all of us to not scoff and belittle people when they respond with this kind of perspective, but see it as an opportunity to enlighten and engage and kind of open their mind to to something without disrespecting them.
Yeah. What about you, Congressman Brady? Any either sexist or racial stereotypes that you sort of face?
Like my colleagues all above, and then you can add, I'm over 40, so I have the opposite end of what they receive. But it started prior to coming to Ohio. I was the first Democratic female to serve as the House leader. And I actually had colleagues come up to me and say, we want to support you. We know you can do the job, but you're black and you're female. No way can you lead in the state of Ohio. Wow. So what's so great about what Sam is doing is the response, teaching us the response to have. Because so often you're caught off guard. Running for Congress, I thought it would be over. I had a proven record. I won that. I was the first female Democrat, black or white, to lead the House. And now I run in a newly drawn district, still black, still female. But my district is not a dominated district with minorities. It's only 22% African American. So now I have people coming to me saying, I want to support you, but I don't think you can win because you're female and you're black. Might add, I won with close to 70%. And knowing what to say and how to answer is where I think you have helped me the most, to be prepared that you're never safe. With all of the successes we've had, that there are people out there, supporters, women, and men, who will hit you with something that is so discriminatory. And like you, I had all kinds of things that were said to me about my race. And lastly, which I thought was very interesting, I got the flip side. Because I live in the district, well in the district, but I didn't live in the urban inner city. Yeah. So then I had people to criticize me that I wasn't black enough, defined by where I live.
What does the research show the impact of even those sorts of comments is?
The research is it's irrefutable, and it shows the devastating effect that it has on women as soon as you even focus on what she's wearing. Where everyone defaults to is to talk about her appearance, right? So we tested that. And so Celinda Lake basically spent $2 million on behalf of our test candidate. There's a man and a woman running. And so there are $2 million ad buy going on. And then as soon as you mentioned that the woman had a blouse and a skirt on, she dropped 12 points. Boom. Boom. And then if you said she looked rather dashing in her navy blue suit, like a positive description, she dropped 10 points. And then if you said, and these are all quotes that were taken from the media accurately describing women candidates, and then if you said, you know, she was having a bad day, the makeup was going into her frown lines, and she was wearing tacky fingernails that she's well known for, right? That was a quote about a sitting woman congresswoman. Then she drops another 11 points. Now what is interesting is the most devastating remark was the one of the most neutral remark. You can just say, no man would ever have that said about him. Let's talk about what the voters really care about. What happens no matter what you say. You recover the lost votes, you get a bump at the end. Now here's the striking thing. Val Demings spends $2 million. How much are you spending in your congressional race? You did $4.1 million in your congressional race. By the way, Val Demings really should be in Congress right now. Just an outstanding candidate. What's fascinating about this latest round of research is it shows unequivocally that as soon as you start talking about appearance, the woman never fully recovers, even if she responds. Why is that? Celinda Lake postulates this, is that voters have a hard enough time believing women are qualified to start with. There's a lot of research out there. Barbara Lee's done it. Women, remember, I'll vote for a woman as long as she's qualified. How many times have you heard that? Right? Do they ever say that about a guy? No. No. So a woman is uniquely vulnerable around her perceived qualifications, and as soon as you draw attention to the fact that she's a woman, she drops like a stone. and she never fully recovers. She gets within about 1 or 2 points. Does the media ever describe or men by their appearance? You tell me.
Yeah.
Even if a man is described by his appearance, it has no negative effect on him. None. This effect is only on women. So to your point, Crystal, and to all of us here, and to Joyce's point, and by the way, Joyce was one of the women along with Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, who's the new chairwoman of the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus, and also Yvette Clarke, who couldn't be with us today. She had a conflict in her district. These are the women that I talked to for hours on the phone to help us guide with this next round of research, and thank you so much, Congresswoman, for that. But what's important is how our congresswomen and elected and candidates respond. What's important is how you respond. Because I need all of you to say, you would never do that to a man, why do it to a woman? You promise to do that, everybody?
Yeah.
All right.
Why do you think that we still have so many comments about women's appearance, so much focus on the way that they're dressed?
Well, I think it's because America is still a relatively young country, and that's the way we were raised. As women, we were raised to be seen and not heard. The focus has been on appearance, and I also believe there hasn't been enough outcry against it. I remember when I was first appointed chief, and it carried over into the congressional race too. When I was appointed, I had worked for 7 male chiefs. 7. I had never heard the media ask them what their weight was. They asked me.
Wow.
They asked me how tall I was. And I think they were painting this picture, you're too short and too whatever to be a chief of police. They focused a lot on, well, you have 3 sons, how on earth are you going to do it? Never heard them ask one of the male chiefs that question. They focused on, wow, that's a really tough job. And my response finally was, well, the job didn't get any dang on tougher because a woman's down in it. It's still the same tough job. But the focus was on, and as we as women and people in the position and others who support women just have to call them out on it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Look, wait a minute, you didn't ask my male counterparts that, why? Or how do you balance your home life? How you balance your children and still be the chief all at the same time.
Right.
I think that's why it happens, and I think we have an obligation to just call them out
And to
bring it
educate.
to their attention.
Yes, I totally agree. And Tulsi, we also see, from my own personal experience, women getting very bad advice on how to handle these situations. Just ignore it. Where the research now clearly shows you need people to call it out for you or to call it out yourself. Why do you think that same old bad advice persists in the sort of campaign political operative world?
The research that's done has shown kind of what we've seen all along is that if you can address something head on, either directly yourself or through a surrogate, it causes not only the person who's making that comment to question themselves, but also the entire community that's sitting there watching and maybe thinking those things themselves and causing that reflection on how maybe they can do things better. And again, we're talking about people who are on our side on a lot of issues or who like to think that they're a champion on women's issues, and yet there are people who we work with and those who are our allies who are still kind of perpetrating some of the same comments that we've heard that the president made or things that maybe they grew up with that they haven't even thought about. During my time in the military, I had some commanders from Hawaii who were very saying, Tulsi, you're the first woman serving in this all-male combat unit on this deployment. New thing for the men in these units to deal with, but we're so happy to have you here, and you're here as a leader. You're leading this group of 45 police officers, and I know Val obviously has much more experience than I do, but what I found through that experience was the challenges that I faced were even greater because they wouldn't recognize the sexism that they were perpetrating themselves. And they would deny it till they were blue in the face. But in the decisions that they made about myself, my performance, my leadership, the standards were clearly different. And everybody could see it. And I think that's what makes this job tougher, is getting people to first realize, take that moment of introspection themselves to see, well, hey, maybe I'm not the person I think I am. Or maybe my belief system is not as deeply held, and conviction is not as deeply held as it could or should be.
Well, and we could have a whole longer conversation about sexism in the military and patriarchal standards there, but did you see parallels between your military experience and your political experience?
Absolutely, and much of it came from the fact that if anyone were to look at my resume without knowing who I was or my name or anything attached to it, they would say, wow, you know, this person's got a lot of experience in a lot of different areas in the military and nonprofit and business and politics. But I faced this throughout my career, but especially in my race for Congress, was she's too young, she's too inexperienced, and it's not her time. And I guarantee that if there were a male candidate who took my resume and put his name on it, he would have been lauded as a great next generation leader to move Hawaii forward into the future. And facing a very well established male candidate in my primary, who was not a standard bearer for women's issues in particular. It was just an interesting question that came just as equally from people in Democratic circles as well as those on the opposing side. And the way we handle these things, the way we respond to them, is continuing to forge forward, pointing out, would you ask this same question of my opponent? And showing them through your example and your words to debunk their misperception.
Congresswoman Beatty, I was wondering, when you had people telling you you're not black enough to represent this district, or a woman can't win in this district, what sort of advice were your campaign strategists giving you on how to respond to that?
My experience taught me if you don't defend yourself or answer, it would continue. So I tried to stay calm and not, because, you know, if a female's angry, then, you know, that's different than when a guy is. And if you're African American and you're angry, then you're angry. So early on, I decided that every time someone said something, I would say, well, maybe you need to think about it this way. And then I would do the experience. Or I found myself being angry that I had to explain and defend. And a couple of times I said, wonder what would happen if my name was John instead of Joyce. And I said that in a large room once. And almost to your point, I said, so let's play like I'm John. And all these things I've done. And instead of having on a St. John knit suit, I have on a Brooks Brothers. and so, you know, then people started getting it, because I think what happens, you have people who don't know that what they're doing is wrong because they've been that way all their life. Then you have people who are just ignorant. Then you have the people who do want to hold us back. And for me, they go in the same pan, because we have to change it regardless of what it is, and I think it is how we respond to the issues.
And Congresswoman Meng, when you were getting those questions about your family and how are you going to take care of your children, did you get advice on how to deal with that, or how did you approach that situation?
People's reactions, they're so mixed and so diverse that all I've been able to do, honestly, and I think that is to do what I feel comfortable with what I can handle, and hearing and talking about different stories and experiences has been so helpful and therapeutic and just very solution-based for me.
That voters like to see a woman sticking up for herself, because if she can stick up for herself, she'll stick up for me as a voter, right? So I think that is a very important characterization too. And with your permission, because there's some other women who are running for office right now in the room. Betty, could you please stand? Valerie, you're here. Please give all these incredible women a round of applause.
We've sort of laid out the problem, and we've laid out some of the responses that are effective as well. Don't we have a responsibility to sort of push that dialogue forward and help to educate people and challenge their stereotypes of what a woman and what a woman candidate is?
I felt incredibly rewarding for me as I've gone through my own experience, and very uplifting as well in saying, yes, absolutely, we have a responsibility to share our experiences. So thrilled to see so many women here tonight who are going through this as we speak, because together we can help each other. Together we are stronger. And I think we realize as we have these conversations that the stories that we have, the story that Grace is telling, is not very different from experiences that women are having in any job, in any industry, all across the country. And those women, I can't tell you how many times I've been approached by women of all ages, young girls, old Japanese woman in Hawaii at an Okinawan bon dance who pulled me aside very quietly and whispered in my ear how grateful she was that I ran and that I fought the fight, and how she was inspired and she felt more courageous as a result to do more with her life. And to have these kinds of interactions with people, with all the arrows and things that are thrown at us from different directions, what's helped me is remembering that it's not about any one of us as an individual, but there's a huge community of people who are not only standing behind us, but who we're linked arm in arm with, and that together we move forward with incredible force when we smile, we work hard, and we continue to forge ahead.
Well said.
I also think it's forums like this that it's not just about us, but it's about you. Letters to the editor. Thank you letters that are published, that you attended a forum and there were diverse groups of women. I think for me, it was when we got our class picture. And we looked at 90 brand new freshmen, Democrat and Republican, and we just heard about 2 with you and Tammy, 1. Only African American female in the class. So seeing the diverse group of people here wanting to work, wanting to run, it's great, because while we bring all that diversity, it's like saying I'm the first, and you can't say there was a second and a third and a fourth. So we made a difference in that class, and everyone's talking about it, but we each need more, because there's power in numbers. I think we have to tell our stories. You make that difference in getting us elected, so we have to say those 2 most powerful words that we always learn, and that's thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
There is a way to balance so you can give back to your community in the way that you want to give back and still be a wife and a very effective mother at the same time. So I think it is important that women who are there also talk about their families and how they make it all work to encourage other women.
I think one of the reasons why women don't run for office as often as men is because they're afraid of, well, what happens if I lose? And I found in my race, I ran, I lost, the world did not end. It went on to other opportunities, and I think that's an important story to tell as well.
I think women are so afraid of it because of all the issues we're talking about right now. We have to be successful. We have to be at the top of our games. We have to work twice as hard. I got over myself when I raised my hand and was sworn in as Orlando's police chief, because I knew every day that I went to work I was going to have some successes and some failures. But when I didn't do what as good as I wanted to do, I dusted myself off. I got right back up and just tried harder the next day. The strangest day that I've had since the election was the day after, because you spend so much time in call time. That's one of the reasons I'm glad it's over. Oh my God. But it was like, what do I do with myself today? I'm not lifting that phone. But after that, I have received invitations to travel all over this country and tell my story, which is a beautiful thing, to help other people, to encourage those who've made it, and to help other people who are thinking about making it. And I love it because I got over myself. Another amazing thing was our hometown newspaper does a 25 most powerful list at the end of every year. I made the list.
Right.
And what they said was, it's a rare person who loses an election and still rises in prominence. So I am thankful to have had the opportunity to run. I'm not through.
Yes.
I am not done. I think it takes 3 things: courage, preparation, and opportunity. And thank you all for providing the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And if I could, we have another honored elected with us. This is Congresswoman Allison Short, who is running now for governor of Pennsylvania. Wonderful example of a woman who helps other women, and we're really honored that you're with us today.
But Val's point, actually, because she was saying that she thinks one of the reasons that women don't run as often is because they understand implicitly what's going on and the sort of sexism that still exists. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so what we all need to do is recognize that women's concerned about work-life balance keep them from running. So these examples that are provided by leaders like Val Demings and quite frankly, Allison Schwartz. In addition to that, we need to acknowledge that women find the negative attacks that come at them in campaigns much harder to deal with than men do. And when they have that sexist tinge to it, it's a double whammy for them, but as long as they respond, as we've talked about, you wouldn't talk about a man that way. Let's talk about what the voters really care about. Women can recover and move on, but we need all of you out here and for you to continue as wonderful role models, all of you as electeds, to show women it is possible.
If you were speaking to a woman right now and she was saying, gosh, I'm thinking about running for office, but I'm a little nervous about it, what sort of advice would you give her?
I would probably give her the advice that I played back to myself, because I was all of those things. I was at what I thought the end of my career. I had an outstanding job, and I was afraid I would lose. I'll be real honest. It was a tough race. There were going to be 4 people in the race, so I would tell her the story. And I would say, I went home and I talked to my family first about it. And I decided to run because I thought I could make a difference. And so often we're sitting as leaders telling people, whether it's running for office, whether it's going into the media, take a job, we say all those things. If someone gives you the opportunity, take the risk. I mean, we are the best folks to talk to women. So I would tell her, I'm gonna give you my own advice. If you really wanna make a difference, if you want your children to know that women can lead, then I think you should take that risk, because we will stand with you. And win or lose, it makes a difference in your life and the lives of others. And you can always run again. And when you win, you just stay and make that difference.
How about you, Chelsea?
Something that Sam just mentioned really hit a tone for me with some of the young girls and some of the women that I've talked to. She said how, you know, a man will wake up and look in the mirror and say, I see a senator. But when you think about some of the great leaders that we've recognized in our lives, they are people who've recognized that it's not about them and that it's about service and caring and serving and taking care of others. And when you think about, I think about my mom and I think about the special women in my life, they are incredible, selfless servant leaders. And to remember that you're not putting yourself out there because you're trying to further yourself or love yourself, or it's not about you, I guess really is my point. And that when you recognize that the great privilege of serving in elected office at any level, but especially in a position now where you can affect change for our country as a whole, is the greatest opportunity to serve others at a very massive level, and is the greatest opportunity to provide that kind of servant leadership. And that when you do that, you build a shield. There's an automatic shield that builds around yourself, where people will be motivated out of fear to attack you, and by remembering that, that puts you in a position of strength. And when you can recognize those attacks as coming from a place of weakness and fear, it allows you to be stronger in responding from that place of service.
I think that's really powerful advice. The focus on this isn't about me, because sometimes it's easy when you are running for office to get wrapped up in the, okay, what am I going to do and what am I going to say? When you recognize that this is not really about you, it's about the people out there, I think that makes a huge difference. Thank you for that. How about you, Grace? What would you say?
I'd give 2 pieces of advice that I would give to women, even if they're not in politics, whatever field they are in, or they want to be in. Number 1 is to be a mentor and to find a mentor. I think it's very important for women to have role models who can sort of carry them through the tough times and talk with them and share their experiences. And even more important for our future is to be a mentor, to reach out to people and to make sure that the message stays there and people are able to practice what they preach. And the second is that it's very important for women to set the standard for ourselves. As a elected who's trying to balance work and family life, You know, the standard is, for example, not to bring your 3-year-old to a fancy dinner unless I change the standard and change the measure and say that it is okay if he screams in the middle of a fancy dinner. The standard is that I'm a good parent, that you're not only a good parent, you know, when I say that I only feed my kids organic food and I cook every meal, except for the days that I serve them canned food and non-organic food. So it's changing the standard.
I love that. How about you,
You
Val?
know, it's just
What do
so
you say?
important that women get support from other women. I remember as a new police chief, as a new congressional candidate, some of the criticism that I received was from other women. You know, but when I think about my mom, who used to clean houses for a living, did not have a high school diploma, but she taught me that I could be anything that I wanted to be and do anything that I want to do. And that's what I would tell a young woman, to have confidence and believe in herself. Surround herself with people who will be honest, with people who've got her back, and always be sure of the why. Be sure of the why, because it will always be the passion that undergirds your service. And just be there for each other. Thank you.
The advice I would give to any woman, and there's no better example I can think of than sitting to my right now, and actually I've run for office 3 times and lost each time. But each time I lost, my name recognition grew. I ran for mayor of the 3rd largest city in the state of Pennsylvania, fastest growing city now, with the fastest growing Latino population in the country. And when I started, my name recognition was 0. We polled it. I was actually 0. My opponent was at 98%. Okay? And I only lost by 42 votes. Okay? I only lost by 42 votes. And then I ran for mayor again, and I only had 4 months to put that race together. But I said, by gum, I'm doing it to make a point. Lost that one again. But now I would go into other parts of the district, and people would stop me and go, "You're that blonde lady with the guy's name, right?" And then, so my name recognition point is about up at my chin level. I knew this would be an uphill climb, or pushing molasses up a sandy hill, which is how I describe my race. But I ran anyway. And now I lost again, but I got more votes than Democrats ever gotten before, was the most endorsed challenger in the country, and had the honor of being asked to serve in this role to help women when they run for office, which is a huge honor. But in truth, now when I go to Bangor, which is the very top of my district, I get stopped in the grocery store and they go, "You are that blonde woman with the guy's name," right? So when I run for office again, which I plan on doing in the future down the road, that I know that even though I lost each time, I increased my name ID, I increased my effectiveness, and I've been able to continue to make a difference in the world. There's absolutely no downside whatsoever.
I absolutely concur with that advice. And with that, I want to thank our panel. Can we please give them